This is Friday, February 27th, 2026, and what I'm about to show you could explain everything happening in the gold market right now. Gold just hit an all-time high of $5,595 per ounce on January 29th. It has more than doubled since the start of 2025, and while mainstream financial media tells you this is just another rally, I am about to show you why the world's central banks are buying gold at a pace not seen since 1950. 11. According to more optimistic forecasts, gold may surge to $10,962. 16 one long-term AI price forecast for gold shows the metal potentially topping $10,000 per ounce as early as April, with a projected high of $10,527 that month. $10,000 gold, that is not a fantasy. That is what major institutions and AI models are now projecting. And the central banks, they have been front-running this move for 3 consecutive years. If you own gold, you need to understand why. If you are thinking about buying gold, you need to understand what the central banks know that we do not. Because what I am about to reveal is something the mainstream financial media refuses to cover. Something massive is happening, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what it is. Welcome to AG Profit Hub. This is where we cut through the noise and expose what is really happening in precious metals markets, while everyone else feeds you the official narrative. Subscribe right now and hit that notification bell, because what I am about to reveal could change everything you think you know about gold. If you find value in this video, smash that like button. It helps the algorithm show this to more people who need to see the truth. And trust me, this is the kind of analysis you will not find anywhere else. Before I show you the data, let me remind you of what just happened. 10 after more than doubling since the start of 2025, gold prices surged another 27% in the first month of 2026 alone. Most people looked at this rally and thought it was temporary. Most analysts said gold was overbought. The mainstream media called it a bubble, but here is what they did not tell you. 4. This is a spike driven by central banks, not retail investors. According to the World Gold Council, central bank gold purchases are now averaging roughly 60 tons per month, more than triple the pre-2022 pace. The central banks have been accumulating gold aggressively for 3 consecutive years. And now, with gold above $5,000, they are still buying. They know something, and I am going to show you exactly what it is. Let me explain what triggered the greatest central bank gold buying spree in modern history, because most people do not understand this, and that misunderstanding is going to cost them money. 38. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion, the United States and its allies responded not only with military and economic sanctions, but also unprecedented financial measures, freezing a substantial portion of the Russian central bank's assets held abroad and excluding large Russian banks from key international payment systems. This was not merely a political act, it was a dramatic demonstration that sovereign reserves and foreign currency wealth are subject to geopolitical authority. For emerging markets, commodity exporters, and reserve managers around the world, the message was clear. Currency reserves are only as secure as the political relationships that underpin them. Let that sink in. The United States froze $300 billion of Russian foreign reserves overnight. 31 Russian gold purchases increased in 2014 after the U.S. issued sanctions on Russia for Putin's invasion of Crimea. Now the country holds $100 billion to $140 billion in gold reserves, which is roughly 20% of the holdings in the Russian central bank, according to U.S. officials. Russia saw this coming. They started preparing in 2014, but most of the world did not. 21. The freezing of Russian assets in 2022 has served as a wake-up call, prompting countries to explore non-dollar payment systems. And what happened next? Central banks around the world started buying gold like never before. 5. According to the World Gold Council, WGC, central banks purchased 1,082 tons in 2022 and 1,037 tons in 2023, the 2 highest annual totals on record. In 2024, purchases remained elevated at 145 tons, more than double the pre-2022 decade average of roughly 400-500 tons annually. 9. The acceleration in central bank gold buying from 2022 onward represents a fundamental break from historical patterns, with institutional purchases averaging 1,045 tons annually over the past 3 years compared to just 473 tons during the 2010-2021 period. This 221% increase above pre-2022 levels indicates structural reorientation rather than cyclical adjustment in reserve management philosophy. Do you understand what I just said? Central banks are buying 221% more gold than they did before 2022. This is not a temporary blip. This is a structural shift in how the world views money. Now let me show you exactly who is buying and how much. And this is the part that should genuinely concern you. 1 year to date, the National Bank of Poland, 95T, continues to be the largest reported official sector gold buyer, almost double the purchases of the next largest buyer, Kazakhstan, 49T. 23. Throughout late 2025, nations such as Poland, Turkey, and India led the charge, with Poland's central bank successfully reaching its stated goal of a 30% gold reserve ratio. Poland now holds 30% of its reserves in gold. Think about what that means. A NATO country on the border with Russia has decided that gold is more trustworthy than dollar reserves. 5. Poland has publicly targeted raising gold toward 20% of total reserves, framing the move as long-term policy rather than tactical positioning. And they are not alone. Meanwhile, Reuters reports that China extended its gold buying streak into early 2026, marking more than 15 consecutive months of additions and lifting total holdings above 2,300 tons. 10. China recorded the largest increase in gold reserves over the period, adding more than 350 tons. 6. The Central Bank of Brazil re-entered the market in 2025, having last bought gold in 2021. It added 43 between September and November, increasing its gold holdings to 172. 8. The Reserve Bank of India, despite a measured pause in late 2025, has allowed gold to reach a record 16% share of its total foreign exchange reserves. And here is the most alarming statistic of all. 6. Our survey found that 95% of respondents expected global official gold reserves to increase over the next 12 months, marking the highest level of optimism in the survey's 8-year history. 95% of the world's central banks expect to buy more gold this year. That is not a market, that is a stampede. Now let me show you how we get to $10,000 gold, because this is not a number pulled out of thin air. This is based on institutional analysis and historical patterns. 16. We continue to expect gold to rally in 2026 as the drivers of its strong run remain intact, Fidelity International portfolio manager Ian Sampson told Bloomberg. Central banks in particular have emerged as a steady source of demand rather than a cyclical one, using gold as a reserve asset insulated from sanctions and currency risks, says Shaniel Ramji at Pictet Asset Management. In this environment where we see the majority of the buying from big central banks, that keeps us more comfortable having a higher weight in the portfolio, Ramji said to Bloomberg. 16. According to Morgan Stanley Chief Investment Officer Mike Wilson, gold is basically an anti-fiat currency play now more than anything else. The Chief Investment Officer pointed to rising debt and declining confidence in major currencies. And here is where the $10,000 prediction comes from. 19. In their newly released Outrageous Predictions 2026, Saxo Bank outlines 2 scenarios that could fundamentally reprice gold. Saxo's UK investor strategist Neil Wilson warns of Q-Day, the moment a quantum computer breaks standard digital encryption. In this scenario, trust in digital assets, crypto, and traditional banking systems evaporates. Gold rockets toward USD 10,000 as the ultimate no-password asset. 19. In a separate prediction, Saxo suggests China could back the offshore yuan, CNH, with gold to challenge the US dollar's dominance. 16. Among major institutions, UBS sees gold ending the year at $5,400, Yardeni Research at $6,000, and Jefferies at $6,600. $15 by the end of this year, gold price is expected to reach $10,151, which would be a 96.36% increase compared to current market rates. And here is the smoking gun. 23. The market reaction was swift. By the end of 2025, the total value of global gold reserves surpassed $4 trillion, eclipsing the value of foreign-held U.S. treasuries for the first time in modern history. Let that sink in. Gold reserves are now worth more than foreign-held U.S. treasuries. The world is choosing gold over American debt, and the implications are staggering. Now let me tell you why central banks are really buying gold, because this is the part that explains everything. 23. The wider significance of this gold rush lies in the erosion of the exorbitant privilege once held by the US dollar. The USD's share of global foreign exchange reserves, which stood at 71% in 1999, has plummeted to roughly 58.5% as of early 2026. This decline is not merely a result of market forces, but a deliberate policy shift towards strategic autonomy by the global South. By utilizing gold as a neutral, non-state-controlled asset, the BRICS plus nations are effectively creating a financial parallel to the Western SWIFT system, insulated from the threat of unilateral sanctions. From 71% to 58.5%, the dollar is losing its grip and gold is taking its place. 21. In 2026, de-dollarization accelerates as central banks and emerging economies, driven by geopolitical tensions and sanctions, diversify from US dollar assets toward gold and local currencies. BRICS nations lead with non-dollar trade, boosting gold reserves amid rising US debt. This shift signals a multipolar monetary future, challenging dollar dominance. 22 BRICS unit is launched in 2026 after what occurred on October 31, 2025, A pilot program was launched, 100 units supported by 40% of gold and 60% BRICS currencies. In various key reserve levels, the BRICS unit start in 2026 has exploited the collective gold reserves of the member states of more than 6,000 tons. It is noteworthy that the introduction of the BRICS unit in 2026 has already put in place cross-border trade mechanisms that are not intermediated by the dollar. 25. Between 2008 and 2021, BRICS' share of global gold reserves surged from 5% to 22%, reflecting the bloc's growing investment in gold. This shift supports ongoing discussions about a potential BRICS currency backed by gold, providing an alternative to the U.S. dollar-dominated global financial system. 21 reports indicate that over 90% of trade between Russia, India, and China now occurs without dollars, signaling a profound realignment in global trade flows. 90% of trade between the world's largest emerging economies is now conducted without dollars, and they are backing their new system with gold. 26 gold-backed unit, a blockchain-based settlement currency, pegged to gold reserves, slated for pilot in 2026. With BRICS holding 20% of global gold, this could stabilize intra-block trade amid volatility. The central banks are not just buying gold as a hedge, they are building a new monetary system, and gold is the foundation. Now let me tell you what this means for you, because understanding the situation is useless if you do not know how to act on it. 2. We believe central bank demand will remain elevated next year and have been encouraged by strong buying in the third quarter of 2025, even with much higher gold prices, Shearer said. If you are holding gold, you are positioned exactly where the world's central banks want to be. They are accumulating at $5,000. They were accumulating at $4,000. They were accumulating at $3,000. Price does not matter to them. Strategic positioning does. 7. Central banks increasingly cite the value of holding a non-sovereign asset that cannot be frozen or subject to counterparty default. If you're looking to buy, understand the dynamics at play. 2. Prices are expected to push toward 5,000 Oz by the fourth quarter of 2026, with 6,000 Oz a possibility longer term. Central bank and investor demand for gold is set to remain strong, averaging 585 tons a quarter in 2026. 2. Looking to 2026, we see around 585 tons of quarterly investor and central bank demand on average, comprising around 190 tons a quarter from central banks, 330 tons a quarter in bar and coin demand, and 275 tons of annual demand from ETFs and futures, mainly front-loaded over next year, Shearer added. 585 tons per quarter. That is structural demand that is not going away. And when structural demand meets limited supply, price has only one direction to go. Let me leave you with this. 38 central banks, long passive holders of gold, have become net buyers at unprecedented levels. According to data compiled by the World Gold Council, central banks have purchased more than 1,000 metric tons of gold annually since 2022, more than doubling the pace of purchases seen in the decade prior. 28. The World Gold Council's 2025 survey reveals that 73% of global central bankers believe the US dollar's share in global reserves will decrease over the next 5 years. 95% of central banks expect to buy more gold this year. 73% believe the dollar will decline. The dollar's share of reserves has fallen from 71% to 58.5%. BRICS nations are launching a gold-backed settlement currency. Gold reserves now exceed foreign-held US treasuries in value. Central banks are not buying gold because they want to. They are buying gold because they have to. They see what is coming. They are preparing for a world where the dollar is no longer dominant, a world where gold is the ultimate reserve asset. 23. The golden pivot has created a new reality for the financial landscape, one where gold is not just a hedge but the headline. For the first time in decades, the barbarous relic is once again the most important asset on the global stage. $10,000 gold is not a fantasy. It is the logical conclusion of everything the central banks are telling us with their actions. The question is not whether you believe me. The question is whether you believe the central banks, because they are voting with their reserves, and they are voting for gold. Drop a comment telling me your gold price prediction for 2026. I read every single comment. Subscribe if you have not already. Hit that notification bell because this story is accelerating and you do not want to miss what comes next. The central banks know something we do not, and now you know what it is. This is AG Profit Hub because the real story is never on the surface. I will see you in the next one.